I was never taught that it was okay. And I feel like that's the most important thing that you could teach somebody. You hear it said all the time for any situation, you know. It's kind of like the go-to statement. It's gonna be okay. It'll be alright. It's okay. Whenever somebody's sad, whenever somebody's mad, whenever somebody's going through grief. And it was something that was never taught to me. I try to think back, and I can't really recall a time where, like, I remember hearing it's gonna be okay. Now, whether that be due to, like, I was too young to remember, or it's just an ambiguous thing to remember to begin with, it's just, I don't remember it ever being okay to make a mistake or to be myself. And I can't help but think that if it was okay, if I was told that it was okay, that I might have been a little more of myself. I would have been a little more confident in myself. I would have been a little bit more outgoing. But for a long time, I was like stuck in this little shell. And the only times I can remember truly being outside of that shell is if I was home alone or home with just my brothers, you know, people who I wasn't really afraid of judgment from, you know, because I got it anyway. But I was never really myself at school or around adults. I was kind of just always afraid of getting in trouble or being scolded. And maybe to a degree that's a good thing, but I don't know, just emotionally, I don't think it developed me. You know, I may have learned to navigate those emotions and learn to do things that wouldn't upset people or my parents. But that's not really living, and that's no environment for a child to grow in. I can remember every single day of like wanting to stay in my room and, you know, play video games or play Hot Wheels or, you know, whatever it is, but just to be away from everybody. Not wanting to show myself outside of my room because there was always something to be said. Always something to be said. And now that I'm an adult, and maybe this is due to the fact that I went through it, you know, it doesn't really bother me if a kid is being a kid. You know, I kind of just appreciate the growth of a person. And I wish my growth was appreciated. I don't have any problems with who I am now. I really like who I am now, and I'm proud of myself for overcoming a lot of things. But I'm curious to see who I could have became if I had the proper guidance and support in my youth. I wonder what I could have achieved, what I would have had the confidence to achieve if more people around me gave me words of support, words of motivation, words of love, rather than words of hate, words of consequence, words of suppression. I'm not going to deny that I was a hard kid to raise, but that doesn't make it any more justifiable to, diminish that flame that was inside me. And it's probably due to society and the expectations of society, but, that's a very small box to put all 8 billion people in. Not everybody is going to live to the standards that society sets or expects. And I don't think it's fair to look down on or judge somebody who doesn't meet those expectations. I remember constantly being compared to other people's children, and it was just like, at the time I just hated it, but now that I'm older, it's like, that was probably really damaging for me. And I do remember like crying about it and like being really depressed at such a young age just because I was different. And I was constantly reminded of that. Not that I was different, but that I wasn't like Jim and Sally across the street. I wasn't like Joe and Schmo in the household. Why couldn't I be this? Why couldn't I do that? And I never understood why I couldn't. But also, I think it came from a place of like hate, where like no matter what I did, couldn't be approved of, even if it was a good thing I was doing. If I was doing a good thing, or if I was doing something without being told, I was doing it wrong, or I don't know, it was really difficult to grow up in that sort of environment. And I'm not proud that the adults, who had control over that environment, were just so non-concerned with what we were going through. And I remember going through a lot as a kid, and it being like, when you're hurting and you can tell yourself like that you're acting different, but nobody around you wants to acknowledge it, especially the people that you want to acknowledge it the most. It was kind of like that. It's just like I was constantly hurting, and even when I wasn't self-aware of the feelings that I was going through, it was most definitely obvious on the outside that I was going through something. And it was kind of like I was always blamed for what I was feeling or what I was going through, rather than anybody truly trying to get to the source of it. My parents got divorced at a young age, and that hurt a lot. And so we did go to therapy a lot, me and my brother. And we went to many different therapists, but that was all like it was the dumbest thing, because once the initial, feeling subsided over it, and, we settled into our new lifestyle, with parents who weren't together anymore, we weren't really emotionally affected that deeply about it. And me and my brother, we always had each other, and we fought a lot. And so I think my parents assumed that we needed to go through therapy because we weren't sorting through our emotions properly, but how could you if you're that young and you find out that your parents don't want to be together anymore? And how is some random guy in a room gonna help you feel any better? You know, I don't know who this is. They all say the same shit. It was kind of just ridiculous. And we were so young that it's like, what's the point of all of this? You know, and I even remember being aware of, like, I know my parents are spending money on this, and I don't think it's a necessary, like, use of their resources. So, like, eventually they just quit sending us to therapy, which, thank God, because therapy was one of the most boring, stupid, useless things for me and my brother at that time. You know, I'm sure it helps other people, but just at the time, you know, we didn't care. We didn't care. We were both boys. It was just a waste of time for us. And, you know, when you're already so young, being the person that has to be emotionally aware, than like being in a room with somebody who's trying to teach you how to be emotionally aware, it's kind of just stupid, because we already were, you know, we knew that we had to put on an act to prevent reactions from our, you know, our family. We had to be a little bit mature at times to keep things together. And you know, being in a room with somebody who's trying to give you therapy for something that you didn't really bring onto yourself, it's just, you know, I think it kind of reinforced the fact that things weren't okay, you know? You know, we needed an avenue to, like, validate our feelings. You know, that was the way that it was presented us for things. We would need to go through therapy for things to be okay. Like, that's kind of the idea that I'm trying to get at. It's like, we needed to go through therapy for things to be okay. Things just wouldn't be okay. But what I want to tell you now is that it will be okay. You know, everything will be okay. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually things will be okay. And if we had a little bit more trust in that fact, we probably would have developed into stronger men. We probably would have been able to handle a lot more discourse in our life. But because there was always a problem, always something wrong with what we were doing, what we were saying, how we were acting, you know, we never knew it was okay. Well, we knew it wasn't okay. Basically, we knew it wasn't okay. And we were only okay when we were free to be ourselves. When we are alone, parents are gone, you know, grandma's babysitting. And I am thankful for my grandparents, because I don't remember a time we ever put on a mask for them, you know, and we upset them, you know, we got in trouble with them too, but just the amount of love and patience that they had for us, it blows me away when I think back on it, because it's just, those were people who truly cared. And I'm so grateful for the times that I got to spend at their house and to be myself and to like feel what it felt like to be normal. Even though as a kid, the things that I went through as a kid felt normal at the time because it was what I was used to. But now that I'm an adult, I realize, no kid should experience that. So what I'll say is that it is okay. It will be okay. It'll always be okay. And to those that come after me, I will make sure that it's okay. Anybody that I'm impacting, it'll be okay.